Hey, we're back in the studio at Davis Media Access. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Autumn Labbe-Renault. Today, it's my pleasure to speak with someone who is known to many in Davis and is a good friend. Our kids grew up together, known each other forever. Debbie Shoup is with us in her guise as a board member and kind of a super volunteer in many ways at the organization many know as T.R.O.T.R, which stands for Therapeutic Riding and Off-Track Rehabilitation. Welcome, Debbie. So glad you could be here.
Thank you for having me.
My pleasure. So many of you, if you're driving out Road 102 between Davis and Woodland, you will have noticed, and perhaps especially this winter, a working ranch with a small sign that says Trotter. And you may have noticed it this winter because it was deeply, deeply underwater for many, many weeks. In fact, I think it's still kind of drying out there. So we're going to talk about that a little bit more, but Debbie is here to share with us, what is Trotter? What is therapeutic rehabilitative riding? So let's start, Debbie, with the mission of Trotter, when it was formed, how long it's been there, those kind of questions.
All right. Well, Trotter was first made. We first started out taking former racehorses and helping to rehabilitate them and give them new homes. And then we branched out from there to helping at risk youth and differently abled children, adults. And then we brought the two of them together to help each other, the horses and the people. And that all started with Shannon Personini in about 2005.
So, as a nonprofit, you've been around in Yolo County for coming up on 20 years, and you're right. You said it started with racehorses, but yet you post a lot of pictures about Trotter. So I have seen pictures of uh, miniature horses, of cows, of pigs, of chicks, of all kinds of animals. So there's a lot going on out there, and beyond. Beyond working at let's talk about at-risk youth and differently abled kids. So what's the interaction between horses and people there, and how do they help each other?
Well, I think helping each other is actually a really good point because it's a two-way react or two-way relationship. So the horses really look out. They're the core of our program. They literally look out for our riders, and it's very sweet. And the riders take care of the horses too. So it's a real partnership there.
So we're going to look at some pictures you provided of the facility, and I think it will be great to bring those up, and we can kind of tell some stories along the way. All right. So the first picture, we have someone who's clearly bonding with this horse at the moment. Who do we have here?
This is the horses Galan with one of our students, and this is actually a great example of a day in the life of Trotter. So on a Saturday, this would be from a Saturday, we have all sorts of lessons, whether they're for adaptive riding, which would be for people who might have special physical, emotional, behavioral needs who we're working with,
Mhm.
or an able-bodied lesson. So this is a lovely picture of one of our riders giving some love to Galan, one of our
And
giant
what
draft
was
horses. And this is Harley, and he's retired. And I love this picture because he's so happy and he's scratching his back. And I think it's a really beautiful example of even though he can't give lessons anymore because he's a
Mhm.
senior citizen horse, he still loves and has a good day at the ranch.
And what was his story before he came to Trotter? He a
Um,
racehorse?
he's a smaller horse, so he was a private person's horse who then brought him to Trotter, and he did lessons at Trotter. And for a long time, he was our screener horse that we put all of our new riders on. And I got put on him when we first got to Trotter, and that was the last time I got to ride him. And because he's used for lessons, and sweet horse, yeah.
Right, right. Right. Let's go back to that photo, the next photo. Yeah,
Oh,
this is what I saw all winter, driving back and forth. And you, of course, you're out there many days a week, and you experienced it from a very different level. tell us what we're looking at. These are pastures and paddocks normally, and they look completely underwater.
Yeah. Yes, over 60% of the ranch was underwater. And we had the very good fortune that we had just in November finished building our petting zoo barn, which you can kind of see maybe on the left of the screen, I think, and
Mhm, mhm.
with a little with some green around it. So we were able to move a bunch of horses into there, into what we call our Mare Motel, into the arena on the upper right. So, but it was a lot of shuffling around, and we're still a lot of the ranch has dried out, but we're still feeling the effects of the flooding and doing repairs. And
And
that's
there you
me with
are, and
Boomer.
who's that?
And that's just a week or two ago. So just trying to get a sense of how much flooding there still is left. And Boomer is a special horse. So he is one of our rescue thoroughbreds. And when we found him, he was the skinniest horse I've seen in my life, skin and bones. And
Mm,
you can see here he's filled out nicely, and he's a very sweet, sweet, loving horse who can take all levels of riders. So he's a great success story.
beautiful.
And this is
Aw.
Whisper, one of our donkeys, also very sweet. What I love about him is you can go and just give him a big hug because he's such a calm, sweet donkey. And his name is Whisper because his bray, instead of being a loud hee haw like other donkeys, is like hee haw. So he's kind of whispers when he brays. Very sweet. And it is springtime. So there are babies at the ranch. So this is one of our new little chicks, which are very, very sweet. And one of our volunteers holding the chicks. So the volunteers at the ranch, in addition to working with the horses, work with all different kinds of animals: donkeys,
Mhm.
llamas, steer, chicks, chickens. And this is Frankie. He's huge, but he's actually a miniature steer. And he has
Hmm.
been at the ranch since he was a baby. He's very, very sweet. And you can kiss that sweet face. This is Party Girl, who's one of our ponies, with another one of our volunteers here. And Party Girl does lessons for smaller people because she's a little pony.
Oh, adorable animals and lovely pictures, but they illustrate, a bigger story about Trotter. Here is this place, a working ranch in the middle of a largely agricultural county, so it kind of speaks to our agricultural history that way. It's a nonprofit with a mission, as many nonprofits, to help others. And as you know, I talk a lot about nonprofits in this county, and those with facilities have an extra burden in times when, for example, when volunteers can't go out to the ranch because of couldn't go out to the ranch because of COVID, or when it was 60% underwater and things
Mm-hmm.
couldn't happen. I know personally, you always talk about kind of the power of volunteerism there, and I can see from these pictures, a setup like that requires animals require a lot of care, a lot of scooping poop, right? A lot of
Uh-huh.
feed, and none of that comes cheaply. So, in addition to volunteer power, I'm curious to know how Trotter, raises funds to sustain operations, and what some of your fundraising activities are through the year. You want to speak to that, please?
Yeah, sure. Thank you for asking. So there are a lot of animals at the ranch. We actually have 46 horses at the ranch right now. And to feed the horses is about $15,000 a month, maybe 1,000 more for expenses and for the regular ranch. So there's a lot of expenses at a ranch like that. Fundraising, one of our biggest fundraisers is actually our open house. And this year, because of flooding, we did not have our open house. So we're
Ouch.
still kind of recovering from that a little bit. And volunteers are the lifeblood of making everything happen. I love our volunteers. Our volunteers can be ages 2 on up. And by the way, we have a orientation the first Saturday of every month from 8 to 10 in the morning. So yeah, the volunteers, lots and lots of hands-on, whether it is scooping poop, which was one of my favorite things, or walking alongside, doing some side walking if someone's a rider, making sure they stay in the horse, or working with all different kinds of animals at the ranch. So
Nice.
lots of
And we
volunteer things that can do.
Yeah, and we had the website up there, and we'll put it up again before we end too, but, TROTR.org, where you can find out all the information. I wanna get personal for a minute because, you do for those of you who don't know Debbie spends about 6 mornings a week out at Trotter, and I did say she's a board member, she's also an instructor and a super volunteer, but, your involvement with Trotter helped you realize a lifelong dream, and I wonder if you could talk about Cisco for a minute and how Cisco has kind of
Oh.
folded into the life of Trotter.
Well, Cisco is, I've always dreamt of having my own horse. And so now Cisco is my very own horse. And let's see. So I think having my own horse certainly brings me to the ranch more often in the early mornings. And I think that I'm more calm and passionate and patient with horses because we have such a bond. Um, so that has been that's very sweet, and I've learned that horses do tell us when they're happy or sad or hurt, and how they learn, and I see how they work so hard to help people. So that has been wonderful. And you mentioned teaching. I think like my other part of lifelong dream is doing animal therapy, and when you see that spark in a rider's eye because it's the first time they ride or the first time they trot and they have this like joy on their face, it just touches me so deeply. And seeing our teachers grow our students and all the volunteers, seeing our students learn and do new things, it's wonderful.
Good. All right. So is there any particular type of volunteer you're most in need of at this point? I mean, we know that all nonprofits are in need of donations. And again, the website, trotter.org is there. But at that volunteer orientation, what might people expect? And are there any kind of particular volunteer needs you have at this moment in time?
That's a great question. So there's two things we need the most help with. One is our stall warrior, which is kind of scooping up poop, which actually is fun, and helping out clean things up for the horses. And then the other is sidewalking and like helping adaptive riders stay up on the horse. So those are our two
Mhm.
things. We have two orientations a month. And I have a great quote from one of our volunteers, if I could throw that out there,
Yeah, please.
which I thought was kind of sweet. And that's from Leslie. And she said, "Some of my most physically demanding days of work are spent at Trotter, but I cannot imagine a place I'd rather be on a Saturday morning." And that, by the way, is the morning where we have a lot of our volunteer activities. All days of the week we do, but mostly Saturdays. There's such a sense of place there, such a welcoming and friendly atmosphere. I go to Trotter to recharge. So I always like to say I think that being at Trotter is actually therapy for all of us, for us
Yeah.
and the animals too.
And I think that is a perfect note on which to end. So I want to thank Debbie Shoup for joining me today and talking about Trotter. Again, therapeutic riding and off-track rehabilitation located on Road 102 between Davis and Woodland. And I've been there and taken the tour, gotten to meet some of the animals, and it's a really lovely experience. Especially if you don't have a lot of experience around horses, like me. They're very large animals. They can be very intimidating, and yet you're right, their energy is special and healing in a way. So thanks for tuning in the studio here at Davis Media Access, and be sure to check our YouTube channel, Davis Media Access, for lots more episodes.